Well, Shabbat Shalom. We're here with Eric in Greeley Hill, California, the closest little town to where we live. We met for Shabbat out here, and most of the group is gone, but there's a few of us hanging out here and decided to do a Prisoners of Hope video. Take it away, Eric.
Well, I just kind of bumped into this. There was a verse that I remembered reading one time that said something about that Yahuwah is going to have Judah be his bow, and that bow, that instrument of war, he would fill with Ephraim. You think, well, how do you fill a bow? With an arrow. So it's kind of like, is Ephraim going to be the arrow and Judah the bow? So the question is, there's this whole other conversation that we're really not going to get into, but just to address this two-house concept. One-house movement, two-house movement, and one-house concept. What does that mean? Well, right after the days of Solomon, back up, David brought the 12 tribes into unity as being one nation. He gave his kingdom to Solomon, his son. After Solomon, his son named Rehoboam took over. And Rehoboam asked of Solomon's wise counselors, what should I do? And they said, look, if you really want to win the hearts of the people, lighten up on the taxes. Solomon was really heavy. And the people will be kindly towards you. And then he asked his compatriots, his peers, his fellow young men, friends, and they said, be tougher than Solomon. And so he said to the people of Israel, my father used whips as scourges to get you work. I'm going to use scorpions. My little finger is going to be heavier than my father's thigh. That's one way to read what he said, one translation. The point is, he was going to be very oppressive. And so the northern 10 tribes rebelled. But Yahweh had given that to a guy named Jeroboam. So now you have Rehoboam, king of the south, Judah, Yehudah, and then you have Jeroboam being the king of the northern 10 tribes. And that was the beginning of the civil, you call that a war. And just a second, could you maybe, it's all scrambled, never mind, I'll just hold that. Anyway, the point is, a little windy out here. Ever since those days, which is late 800s BC, I guess, middle 800s BC, Israel's been torn in half. 10 tribes to the north, 2 tribes to the south, Levi never having a land to call its own, so it kind of floated in between, and the priests came out of Levi. But there's this talk about the 2 different houses. Anyway, for Yahuwah to say that that was of him, that it wasn't just man's squabbling and breaking, disintegrating, tearing apart the unity, but that it was actually of Yahuwah's design, so that with these 2 houses he could better conduct his business affairs, you might say. Yehudah being the bow, Ephraim being the arrow. Well, I noticed then in Stone's Tanakh it reads differently. And it reads in such a way that it was almost unintelligible. You have to almost put your own take on the matter into the translation, Zechariah 9:13, in order to make any sense out of it. And it's like, should we really have to do that in order to get something out of Scripture? I mean, is it fair to say, look, just call it what you will, just to pick that up and run with it and say, well, this is what Yahweh said? It's like, well, not necessarily. Zechariah 9:13. For I will bend Judah as a bow for me. I will fill the hand of Ephraim with a bow. Fill the hand of Ephraim with a bow? Well, that's not the same thing as filling the bow of Judah with Ephraim being the arrow. So here, comparing Stone's Tanakh translation to what I had always remembered hearing as I was years ago reading out of the English translation, King James or NIV or whatever it might have been, this is a whole different consciousness, a whole different perspective of what this verse is saying. And then it's left up to me to try to figure out, so what? What does this mean? What does this have to do? Is this an ancient history, or is this a future prophecy? Is that up for grabs too? I mean, what do you do with this stuff? But as I was reading that, I read a little further. It says, "And I will stir up your children, O Zion." Well, who's Zion? Zion is like this mythical, wonderful time of, you might say, like the Messianic era. Kind of like comparison with Camelot. Doesn't even necessarily exist. It's like this projected, oh yes, the days of Zion. And against your children, O Greece. Really, is Yahweh against Greece? I mean, he used Greece in the New Testament, took their language and their culture, and he spread the gospel of the Messiah, gospel of Jesus Christ across the face of the earth. Is this talking about the conflict between the Hebrew and the Christian? "And I will make you like the sword of a warrior." You-hoo! You-hoo! One of the problems with Hebrew is, in English, especially in grammar school, if you don't identify the subject of the action very particularly. George and his dog were taking a walk in the woods, and he found a stick. He who? Was it the dog or was it George? You have to identify. But in Hebrew, they don't identify. And so there's a lot of, you might say, whimsical conjecture by the translator as to which party is doing which action. And I find this all the time, which is one reason why there's so many different translations. "I will make you like the sword of a warrior." Is that the sons of the children of Zion, the children of Greece, Ephraim, Yehudah? Who's he talking about? So in order to find out, you have to back up. Let's back up to verse 11. "Also you who?" Back up, verse 9. "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion." Daughter of Zion. Well, there was children of Zion and now a daughter of Zion. Who's the daughter of Zion? Is it Yehudah or is it Israel? Or is it Ephraim? Or is it the 12 tribes combined? "Shout for joy, O daughter of Jerusalem." Is that another name for the same, or is that two different identifications of two different people? Daughter of Zion, daughter of Jerusalem. "For behold, your king will come to you, righteous and victorious is he. A humble man riding upon a donkey, upon a foal, a calf of a she-donkey." Or a calf of she-donkeys. So this is where in the New Testament gospel you have, on Palm Sunday, Yeshua riding in on a colt, a foal of a donkey. And they're saying, oh, this must be a messianic prophecy. And it even says here in the margin, Messiah comes to Zion. But is Zion the same as Jerusalem? Maybe. Verse 10, "I will eliminate any battle chariot from Ephraim and any war horse from Jerusalem. And the bow of warfare will be eliminated. And he," that would be the Messiah, "will speak peace to the nations." Well, when Jesus is recorded in the Gospels, he says, "I've come to bring a sword," not peace. But he's the Prince of Peace. But was he victorious? They killed him. Did he come in righteousness? They killed him as being an infidel. So what was he? Why is it that the Jews don't recognize Jesus as being the Messiah of this, even though he was riding on a donkey? What I'm saying is, I'm just trying to show you where some of the confusion comes in. The bow of warfare eliminated. Well, then why is he talking about having Judah be the bow and Ephraim the arrow, or having a bow in the hand of both Ephraim and Judah? Why is it so hard to understand? Well, verse 12. Well, let's go to verse 11. Well, finish verse 10. "His dominion will be from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth." Dominion of who? The Messiah? Has that happened yet? I remember hearing once the Catholics say on the Catholic radio, we know we're right because we won. We took over the world. Is the dominion of the Catholic Church the same as the dominion of the Messiah? Have they taken over the entire earth? Do they rule from sea to sea? Is that what he's referring to here? Zechariah 9:10, verse 11. Also you, is that talking about the daughter of Zion? Through the blood of your covenant, I will have released your prisoners from the pit in which there is no water. When? What's he talking about? When is he releasing? What do you mean blood of the covenant? Is that the New Testament covenant from Jesus dying on the cross, or is that the Old Testament covenant where they killed the, was it circumcision, or they killed the bulls and lambs and goats? And rabbinical commentary here says it's both of that, and it's like, again, we can like pin the tail on the donkey. You can imagine your own doctrine and fill it in and say, yeah, that proves we're right. Is it proof? Verse 12, Zechariah 9:12. Return to the fortress, O prisoners of hope. Title of this video, Prisoners of Hope. Who is that? Today also, a second announcement, I will return to you. Then verse 13, because, now this is the way he's going to do the return, I will bend Judah as a bow for me, I will fill Ephraim with a bow, and I will stir up your children. Verse 16, Yahweh their Elohim will save his people like sheep on that day, for the stones of the crown will be exalted on his land. How goodly and how beautiful will be the grain of young men, and the wine that will make maidens sing. Gosh! Pretty difficult. And then verse 1 of chapter 10, request rain of Yahweh in the season of the late rains. Yahweh who makes rain clouds, and he will provide them a shower of rain. For each man, herbage in the field. Ask Yahweh to send rain. We just had some pretty horrible fires out here in California and Oregon, and we were asking of Yahweh to send rain. Hasn't been any here in California yet, has there?
Not yet.
We
Just
got the fires
a few sprinkles during Sukkot.
We got some clear blue. There was just nothing but heavy gray.
A lot of smoke, yeah.
A lot of smoke. In Oregon, they got some rain this week, and that. Thank you, by the way, for those of you who prayed for us up in Oregon. The fires were getting close while the winds were blowing. It looked like it was just full on coming at us like a locomotive. But the wind stopped, and then the fires were abated. And then they just had rain this week. But I appreciate your prayers of concern and camaraderie there. But going back to this, is he actually talking about season of late rains? I've heard it's called the latter rain, and then the Christian charismatic mindset is that that's a outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Is that what he's talking about here? Did he say request of Yahweh at the right season, the season of the late rains? Well, that would be right about now, wouldn't it? Isn't that what this is referring to in the autumn? You don't want it to wreck your harvest field, so would you want it to be before?
Depends on what you got planted.
That's right. If you have the wrong crop when you get rains, it's going to ruin it all. I had a friend years ago. He had a strawberry farm. The next day they were going to harvest the strawberries. A cloud came over, pounded down hail, and his entire field turned into mush. Not the neighbors, just him. And he said, Christian guy said, well, I guess God wants strawberry jam. I'm done. That's it. I'm done. Sold his farm, got out of the business. It was like, nothing you can do. The point is, what do these words mean? So, in looking at this, I came up with a whole different take on the meaning. So if I look at Zechariah 9:13, Ki Derek T Li Lamed Yod Yehuda Kashat, that would be the word bow, Melati, fullness, Ephraim, Ve Orarti, Ayin Vav Resh Resh Tav Yod. B'nai Zion al Beneka Yon. Beneka Zion, connected with or against Beneka, your son Yon. That's Greece. Yod Vav Nun. Ve Shemteka Kaharav Gabor. So the word Shemteka, Shem would be name or place. So I have placed you, Shemteka, like a sword, Kacharev Gabor, like a sword of a warrior. Placed you like a sword of a warrior, but not identifying. Well, there's a whole nother way to take this. So just for what it's worth, I just wrote this up last week and I sent it to a few people. So it's on a PDF, 8 pages. And I didn't go through the process of word for word, that kind of thing. I don't know if that shows on the camera. So I'm just basically looking at the pieces of the words and writing them down. And in this study that I wrote up, I have a list of about 30 different mechanisms that I use for deciphering what do these words actually say. It's not a small matter, but this is what I came up with. Yahweh is saying, because my way, my manner, my custom, my education, in other words, the things that he's educated his people about, Yehudah made difficult, unintelligible as drunkenness. And my fullness is wearisome, tiresome, objectionable, and protested against by Ephraim. Wait a minute, where's the bow and arrow? Reads completely different. So am I right? Or is the traditional translation right? The point is this Yahweh saying, I'm going to bend Yehudah as my bow and fill it with Ephraim, or he's the same exact word that means to bend with a bow is the word derek, dalet resh kaf, and it means literally to bend as a bow, way, custom, manner, method, mode, business, educated, guided, and instructed. So when you teach somebody how to bend a bow, it's the same concept of teaching them how to climb a mountain or how to do gardening or how to bake bread. It's the process of doing something correctly so that the intention is the end result. You get a successful project. That's what the word means, and it's just translated way, or in this case, bend a bow. The word bow, kuf shin tav, well, the word shin tav can mean drunk, to drink, sit or set, or the foundation to place. Kuf shin, tav might be the suffix, means reluctant, difficult, severe. The word for straw, which is old dried out, hollowed chaff. It also means to argue against and something unintelligible. So to say Yahweh's complaint against his own people here, the southern kingdom on the one hand, Yehudah, you're making my education method, you're making my stuff, you're making my ways to be unintelligible and severe, like some drunk maniac is the only guy that would want to regard this. You make him sound like completely worthless. Fullness, but the word fullness, mem lamed aleph, mem can be the prefix that means basically to objectify or to make it palpable. Lamed aleph is the word to negate, no, non, not. And it also means a place of wearisome, tiresome occupation of like, oh, gosh, do we have to put up with this kind of... That's the way most people feel about the Torah. And the word Ephraim, aleph pei resh yod mem, pei resh should be the word fruitful, or the word for bull, or to fertilize, or that which has potent life in it. But also, aleph pei resh yod means incinerated, or turned into ash, or a canopy. So if we read other verses in this section, which we don't have time to do this whole thing, but my point is if you write out this whole section in Zechariah 9, you'll see that Yahweh's talking about Kuf Shin Tav also is a rainbow. And in the book of Revelation, it talks about John saw this vision where he sees this throne, as it were, of El Shaddai, and there was a rainbow, an emerald rainbow, and it was this glorious presence. But here, Ephraim has essentially turned it to ash. So what I'm saying is that part of the translation that I'm doing with this is to say, because I know other texts, book of Revelation, book of Matthew or John, I'm pulling on those other pictures and comparing them to some of the pictures which are written here. You're not going to get that from the Jews, and if anybody says you got to be true to the context of the text, they're not going to do that either.
Side note, I think Ephraim's only mentioned once in the Brit Hadasha. It's pretty prophetic.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember
Talks
where? What he
about
says?
him leaving the Jews and heading to Ephraim. It's pretty cool. I can't remember exactly where it was. Just people look up Ephraim and find out where it is in the New Testament, and they can see that. And it's pretty trippy.
Well, I'll mention something about Ephraim here coming up in Jeremiah 33, 23 and 33. Get to that in a minute. But anyway, the next word is here is Ayin Vav Resh Resh Tav Yod. Well, Ayin Vav Resh Resh, what does that mean? Appellant, like to appeal in court. A claimant, again a court. To protest or objection, court. But it also means to be stripped down. Ayin Vav Resh, blind or exposed. So there's something about Ephraim is like appealing in court. Well, if Ephraim is the northern 10 tribes, some people say, well, that represents the Christians. Then it's like, hey, we don't have to do that. Jesus died on the cross. We don't have to keep no stupid Torah. And the Jews have made it impossible. And Yahweh said nobody could keep it anyway. So you get all this squawk talking about this stuff over the years. And then he goes on to say, Beneka, your son, Zion. Well, what is Zion? Well, Zadi Yod means my command. It's also the word for ship, S-H-I-P, and like the admiral of the ship, when he says, Ani Yahweh, it's like I and my majesty make this declaration. And only the people that are on his crew as his, the ones on his ship, under his command, as his, you might say his navy, we did the video about navigating and navy and reading his words, to regard his command and order as the word Zadi Vav. So my take on the word Zion is that means I'm the one doing, that's the suffix Vav Nun, the one in the action of doing what he commanded. If I say he commands, that would be Zadi Vav. His perspective is my command would be Zadi Yod. And the only way I can get that is from, you might say, extrapolating the structure of the language by looking at the letters. And then it says, Ayin Lamed. Well, that's yoke with. It's translated against, but it might be with. Beneka, your son, the word grease, but grease is Yod Vav Nun, which also means mud or mire. In Vav Nun, one who's doing what? So you could say, for Ephraim to be groaning, it also means groaning. To groan, have you ever heard like an old wooden ship get stuck in the mud and everything's moving, or like a wooden house in the wind and creaking and groaning? It's like, oh! That's what the Christian church has been doing for 2,000 years. So have I. So have everybody been doing, oh, we don't have to sit down on Shabbat. Oh, we want to eat bacon. Oh, we want to... The word Zion means also to cry like an alley cat, a desert cat, to cry out. Do you know anybody whose children are autistic?
Oh, yeah.
They scream, they cry, they wail like a desert wild cat, like somebody in pain, groaning. It's just the stuff that's been happening around the world, but America presently with giving these vaccinations and injections, melting people's brains to the point that they just scream and wail, is kind of what this is talking about. But it's translated, your children, O Zion, against your hands, O Greece. And it might have nothing to do with that. It goes on to say, because you guys so moan and cry out and wail against my instructions, and we've said in other videos that what Yahweh does is mirror back, reflect reciprocate our own attitudes pictorially back at us so we can see. Hebrew is very pictographic. He says, I'm going to amplify your objection. Boil it down to the basics. Stripped barren, mirrored back at you. That's going back to ayin vav resh resh, which is to say turn back. It's the word for to be blind and to be exposed is ayin vav resh. To be naked, stripped down. And he says, so doing, crying like a cat, groaning about it like a ship stuck in the mud, I'm going to place your failure to be the central theme, the great testimony. Yahweh said that his blessing upon his people was going to be the primary thing that people would look and say, wow, is there anybody so wise, so blessed, so full of life as the people of Israel? But because Israel could do nothing but bitch and moan and complain and feel grieved and oppressed, like that movie, Fiddler on the Roof, where Tobiah says, I know we're the chosen people, but come on, can you choose somebody else for a while? That's been the attitude. That's been the problem. Yes, Yahweh, choose me, choose us. Okay, so I went ahead and translated that whole thing and wrote that out for a few verses here. Let me go on to one, and that'll be available on the hopefully on the web page here. But the point is, what's the solution? So if you go on to Zechariah 9:14, so I didn't write all this on the PDF that's going to be available. But what I did is I just broke it down. So getting on to chapter 9, verse 14 to 17. I'll just read my take on it. Yahweh, their exalted one, he will cause to be. Now, you won't see that in the text. But the word Yod He Vav He, literally, the Yod is the prefix that means he will, and He Vav He means to exist, or cause it to manifest, to exist, to be. Elyon is exalted. El Elyon is translated God Most High, or Elyon is Most High. So I'm not going to tell you for every word, but what I'm saying is I'm trying to go through every single word and every single letter and figure out what is all this about. The other interesting thing, twice the word Mator, Mem Tet Resh, is used in chapter 10, verse 1. Well, Metor, those are the three consonants, Mem Tet Resh, MTR. But the vowels are just added in. Well, that's where you get the word meteor. And I made note that on September 21st or 23rd or 26th, which we're past that now, some people were saying that they were anticipating or that was coming in a giant meteor was supposed to hit the earth. It's like, well, what do you know? Here's Meteor Day. What is a meteor? It means the same as the word rain, or to make manifest, to make it actual. Like we're talking about something, literally the word Mem Tet Resh means, oh, there it is, present tense. It's raining, it's snowing. The event happening in actuality is the word Mem Tet Resh. Well, Mem is a prefix, so then you have to look at Tet and Resh. And what I'm saying is that the analysis by breaking down all these words is the course of the study. But, let me just go on. He will cause it to be their promotion, their elevation. Elenu. It would be nun vav would be us, or we. Ayin lamed yod is to elevate or to raise up to a higher status, elevated to a greater dignity, or even the word for success or springing up as a surprise, as a prize, as that thing promised to you. He will exhibit. Same word might be read as he sees, or it might even be read when he approves of what he sees. Now, so here's the point of this translation. If I say this word means when, now that letter when could be a word, kaf yod, or it could be ayin lamed, something in the context of being related to, or it could be simply the letter vav. And you could say, well, how do you know what it is? Am I making stuff up? And it's like, it's why there's so many different translations, is because there's so many different ways to read this. But if I say, and he will exhibit, or Yahweh sees, and you say, oh, I'm just telling you a story. Yahweh sees something. It's out there. But if I say this word means when Yahweh approves of what he sees, Suddenly, the context of this verse is on our back, presently, us, to be exhibiting something that he's looking for and that he's looking at. So that when he sees us, who's us? I'm suggesting that the us is the maiden of Jerusalem, the maiden of Zion, the maiden of Israel, the prisoner of hope. And what does that mean? We'll get to that in a second. When they look at each other as in a mirror, remember, kind of mentioned that cartoon somebody wrote, Yeshua at the leaning against the rock, Garden of Gethsemane, and says, "Hey Dad, it's me, you." It's like, what? Who's talking here? Who's listening there? The two are so indistinguishable, but it looks like the same face in a mirror. For us to be regarding Yahuwah's words and keeping his ways, his derek, doing what he said, then we should be like Yeshua. Yeshua said to follow him. Even the Apostle Paul, Shaul, he said, "Follow me as I follow the Messiah." Well, we should all be examples of doing the right thing. But the point is, if Yeshua said, "Hey, I only do what I see my Father doing. I only speak what I hear him saying. This is not my own agenda. I'm doing his bidding." Okay, well, we can model Yeshua, but again, this gets into the subject of, should we worship the Messiah? We're supposed to be worshiping the Father. That it was, Yeshua talked about my Elohim and your Elohim, my Father and your Father. He put himself into our capacity, pointing at the one in the other capacity, which is the divine. Some people don't like the word divine or divinity because it speaks of Greek and it speaks of other types of deities, but you've got to use words. The point is, let me get back to this. When they look at each other like Yeshua and Yahweh and can't tell the difference because they're identical, as in a mirror, the same heart, when Yahuwah sees himself exhibited in us, or in the context of the spelling of that word, it'd be in them because it's a projected prophetic word, then the word says he will burst forth, or kind of like this instant eject like lightning. This explosion, you might say, like a flower suddenly blossoming. Not that flowers go that fast, but some can in the right conditions. What I'm saying is that the Hebrew language is pictures. And so there's pictures going on here, and if you're just reading the words as a narrative, you don't get it. So you almost have to go back and look at each word in Hebrew. Frank Seekins wrote the book Hebrew Word Pictures, and he's talking about the pictures that are in each letter. But I'm also saying that there's letters or pictures in the words. And then other pictures in the sentence structure. And all of that goes into mechanisms of how to read Hebrew. Ejecting, suddenly appearing like lightning, his arrow, flashing, glittery. He will burst forth, swing his axe. Well, first it's talking about an arrow. Now it's talking about an axe that you swing and like splitting a piece of wood, a tree trunk in half to make firewood, as it were, making a separation. And then the word is mentioned here, El Shaddai. Oh, Shaddai is the Almighty. El Shaddai is the Almighty. So swinging an axe like Almighty. But the word shad means breast, female breast. So you have a female breast with cleavage, and there you have swing an axe and make a separation. So you have to be able to picture what he's saying and why he uses certain words to get the full scope of what he's trying to show us. And he created everything in the universe, including human anatomy, various types of animals, the way the plants and trees, the stars, he made everything work to exemplify the message. Exemplify, turn it into an example, something we can look at and give it shape. Adonai, well, the word Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yod, my Lord. Dalet, Nun is a judge, or to make a determination, make a decision, like a separation. A cleavage is a Dalet, Nun. Playing tennis, the ball lands, how close did it get to the line? Somebody, the judge, has to make the call. Is it fair or not fair? In or out? That's the word Dalet, Nun. Aleph is a prefix meaning I will. Yod is a suffix meaning my. So I can read the word Adonai as I have to choose. I have to make a determination here. But to just translate it as my Lord, yeah, that's legitimate, but what's he really trying to say? So I choose to translate the word as Adonai as I choose to be his. I choose life. Dalet Nun. Nun is the letter that springs forth in life. Dalet is the letter that's a door. My decision, my determination. So to read the words Adonai Yahweh is basically, by my determination, I choose to belong to Yahuwah. And that goes back to where Moshe said, I put before you life and death. I think it was in Deuteronomy 4. Choose life. How will we be doing?
35.
Beautifully adorned with shofar blast. The word shofar means to be beautifully adorned. Lightning and thunder. And then there's a picture of that which goes up like a volcano, but also like this, the ground opening up like this sudden sinkhole, and everything going down. So there's this double picture, the blowing up and the sinking down. Just casually walking along the path as instructed. The word derek. Just walking along. We're just doing what he said. As a wayfarer, continuing along the flowing course. All these words, wayfarer, continue, flowing course, all these words are part of the definition of the word derek. And so when I'm saying these words, like on other videos and other translations I've done, I'm not just making these words up. I'm finding them in the dictionary and pulled out, extracted from each letter used in these words. Just so you know what I'm doing, which any of you could do as well. Suddenly out of nowhere, wham, storm, tempest, assault, vehement rage. Against who? Why is it suddenly happening, and who is it against? Yahweh's vehement rage. Verse 15, Yahuwah Zavot. Well, he will cause to exist. And then there's this word like stabbing a knife to the hilt, grief and sorrow, raising his pestle. The other day we showed some rocks, and there's this one shape of a rock, that's the pestle, and the dish is the mortar, and you put grain in there, and the Native Americans here would take that rock and smash and turn it into meal. That's the picture of what he's going to do suddenly in a moment. And so the question, prisoner of hope, who's Yahweh going to do that to? Is it his own people? He's been doing that to his own people for nearly 3,000 years, since the days of David, Solomon, days of Jeroboam and Rehoboam is when everything went to heck. The word halal, het lamed lamed, means profane, vile, ruined, punched holes in, emptied out. Everything went to halal back in those days. It's been almost 3,000 years. Raising his pestle, they being the meal in his mortar to smash down. And then the word, he puts the kibosh on them. Well, that's an English word. Put the kibosh on them. That means conquer them, subdue them. It's a picture of a pickle in a jar. Well, that's the Hebrew word kaf bet shin. Like catching a rat in a trap. Then there's this word that it's a catapult. Like a slingshot, you put a sling and throw it around and you throw one rock, or the Dennis the Menace slingshot, you pull it back and shoot one rock. But there's this picture here. We were just up at this train track the other day, and there's a wall. They call it the Chinese Wall of California. The Chinese railroad workers hand-built. It's not huge, but it's kind of like the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. It's like these big stones built up to hold up thousands of pounds of trains running over the top of this thing. I mean, that thing had to build solid. It's kind of bowing out. And then so there's this picture here of a sail, like a sail catching the wind. And so this picture is based on these words, like this entire wall bowing out like a sail catching the wind. It's Yahweh shooting a rock in his catapult, but it's not one rock, it's the whole thing. And there's this phrase called shooting the wad. You know, you're gambling, you take everything and you put it on one number, or you're all in. This is it. And it goes back to the days in the muskets. Yeah. You'd put in some powder, you'd take a wad of cloth, you'd cram it in there, you'd put the bullet in there, and shooting the wad is shooting the cloth out too. I don't understand all the mechanics of the thing, but what I'm saying is there's this phrase, and just so you how some of this translation worked, I was just up there a couple days ago at that wall when I was looking at this verse, and I saw the correlation because we had also just watched this TV show, movie thing about the Revolutionary War, Washington's spies. And it's just the coincidental timing. of being at the Chinese wall, reading this verse in Zechariah 9, and seeing this thing about shooting these muskets. It all came together in this perfect view of Yahweh saying, I'm going to throw the whole thing at who? When Betula Israel, when the Virgin of Israel, the daughter of Zion, is reflecting Yahweh's face in her heart, her actions, her behavior, her hope, we'll get to that in a moment. That's when Yahweh can say, look, he's spent 3,000 years trying to bring his people back to him, and that's when he suddenly says, okay, now that's the time when he sees his reflection in his people, his virgin Israel, and then he turns and suddenly smacks down like a meteor coming out of the sky against the enemies of his people. The foundation of their wall will become liquefied. That's like an earthquake, where what was solid just turns to literally liquid earth. Flowing like wine at a banquet, blood at a slaughter feast, they will drink. The word shin tav is to drink. Well, that goes back, it's also a foundation. So that goes back to Yahweh saying, because Israel had turned their back on Yahweh's ways, made it difficult, stiff, like straw, unintelligible, like drunk, as long as that our teachers, rabbis, priests, professors, have made Yahweh's words out to be unintelligible, like only some drunken madman would have any regard, then we've suffered under that. And when we who choose to be Betula Zion will turn back to Yahweh and says, look, I'll just do what you said, then he will take that cup of wrath, cup of trembling, out of the hand of the enemy that he gave to give us to drink, and he's going to make them drink it. That's all through the various Old Testament prophets. These same imagery he keeps using, but based on the English translation, we just can't see it. But here it is in another place. The fullness, the essence of their ways, intoxicated by their own criterion, they determine and distinguish for themselves, and so it is. Their own shamefulness is their own pickle juice. So when we read about the stuff that's coming out in the news these days, about the adrenochrome, child trafficking, what various Hollywood people are doing with these satanic cannibalistic rituals, they're making the pickle juice that they're going to be conquered, grabbed, and made to drink or put in by their own actions. And we who trust in Yahuwah have nothing to fear of them. Verse 16, the people saved, it's telling you who's not going to be subject to this coming event, delight in Yahweh their Elohim on that very same day, like little sheep playing going out. Well, if you're playing and going out, you're not wearing a mask in quarantine. These people are designing their own prison. And if we have Yahweh, the prisoner of hope under Yahweh is basically saying, okay, for 2,000 years we've been taught we don't have to keep no stinking Torah. No law, just the law of love. We can eat whatever we want. We can do whatever we want. We're pre-forgiven. Doesn't matter. Atonement's already been meted out for us. We're free. So why in the hell would I put myself subjected to a harness, a yoke, an imprisonment, volitionally, to go back under the constraints, the word is samek resh, to go back under the law? Because that same word is used for harness, bridle, and prisoner. And the word for hope is kuf vav, where we get the word tikva. The letter kuf can even be seen as a shackle. And what this is basically saying is that when Yahweh builds, going back to the picture of the rock wall, when I build something, you pick this up and move it and put it there, and pick this up, a piece of wood, a piece of brick, a piece of drywall. The way Yahweh's stuff works is that when we do His things, His stuff, His commands, His moedim, His Shabbat, then suddenly that opens up this portal in the universe in some other kind of dimension, and all of Yahweh's stuff comes screaming in like with a jet engine. That's basically what it's saying here. There's this word for mem tav nun, voluntarily, slowly, patiently doing as stipulated. Mem Tav Nun Yod Ayin, a self-propelled motor, is what it says in the dictionary. He says, I will build my ebony Nazar. It's translated as stone crown. You could read it as my citadel for those who keep the bondage of being devoted, abstaining from the things that he said to abstain from, and doing the things he said to do. The prisoner of hope is one who just does what Yahweh says. Like the start, it seems like what he's talking about is keeping his Moedim, and then you could say, when I stop working, keeping the Shabbat, that's like hitting the starter button on this self-propelled motor for all the promises of Yahweh to happen. If I kill the business, if I kill my business on Shabbat, then Yahweh, like a teeter-totter he says, I'll reciprocate. I'm going to kill their business. And then this word for dalet mem means imagine. It also means to die, bleeding, silence, destroyed, equal, example. So there's this word mem tav nun vav samek samek vav tav. No escape, fluttering, galloping. It's almost like it's saying, when we do what Yahweh said, stipulated, and stop working, he hits the kill switch on their whole agenda, their whole business. We do Yahweh's business, and he will make us, being the Betula Zion, the virgin daughter of Zion, I'm just going to do what he said. When we do what Yahweh said, one in whom there's no, you might say, other seeds of other deities, of other teachings, of other words, Betula, virgin, like the constellation Virgo with this spica, this ear of wheat or corn, the fruitfulness of the word, the virgin birth is pictured right in here. Verse 17, my hand, he's holding up, that's Kaf Yod. It also is translated for thus, because, when, wherefore. How full basket, wonderful, goodly, workable, how beautiful, every puzzle piece fits exactly, fitting like male to female. So again, he's using physiological graphics to show you how the whole universe is fit together. A garden of select young girls. It's like a lady garden, a garden of girls. What is he talking about? Virgo, Betula, holding the corn, the spica, multiply. And again, a Betula is kadosh, meaning consecrated, devoted, set aside. Reconnoiter, spy, search for it. How can our behavior do anything about those guys, our enemies, drinking the poison out of the goblet of their own design? I can't concoct a formula and make them drink it. I can't pick up a sword and outdo some of their weaponry that are beyond any scope I have. All he gave us is do what he said. Stop working on Shabbat, regard his Moedim, learn his language. Truth, kindness, justice, righteousness, emet chesed, mishpat, zadikah. 6 minutes, we're almost done here. The word tavav reshin, similar to tav resh samik, protecting, shield, contradict, oppose, debate. It's the word for heredity, the root of the word for Tarsus, like Paul of Tarsus. It's the word atavism. Well, I looked at it, atavism. What is that? It means ancestral ways. Revert, go back to the ancient path. That's the word for paleo. Traits or characteristics, like DNA, and that word means it might be absent from intervening generations, but a certain trait or characteristic like DNA that's in an ancient ancestor goes dormant and all of a sudden appears in the future. Well, that's exactly us going back to keeping the ways of the Torah. It's exactly what this word means. And it might be an individual embodying such a reversion, a throwback to an earlier type. And then you get Zechariah 10:1, where he says, ask, beg of Yahweh, raining down meteor. It's time, make it appear, expose it. The word bet ayin is like a bubble coming to the surface, fright, terror, dismay. The conspirators who have laid snares become snared, eclipsed. In reality, manifest. And there's that word smite, Remember that other picture of him pushing the smite button?
Smiteth.
Piano falling on the guy. He's saying, ask of Yahweh to make it happen. Oh, let's just wait until he finds it time. No, he said, ask of Yahweh to make it happen. Yahweh, will you please send the meteor of smite upon our enemies? If this is the time that we are exhibiting you to your face, learning your ways, trying to walk in your ways, keeping your ways in our heart, nurturing your words, and if we're not there yet, then get us to that point where you can just get along with the program and cleanse the earth of what your humans are doing. It's also the word for flogged. Yahweh doing present tense, that's the word matar. It's raining. It's the actuality. The meteor appearing, not the one that they're saying, well, you're supposed to open the 21st, the 26th, and it didn't happen. Well, maybe it'll happen in December. It's like, make it happen, would you, please? Incredible storm, lightnings, rain. The maiden's form is displayed. The maiden's form, the maiden of Israel displayed. It's also the word for clothing, revealing. It's almost like, I'm not trying to be sensual about it, but it's all kind of like a wet t-shirt. The maiden's form is visible, is evident. It's like Yahweh's Betula, maiden, virgin, is somehow made evident in the reality, the context of the storm, the rainstorm, of this tempest, of these lightnings, because we have to trust in him. Not doing evil. Not being afraid. And that is he's blending concepts with physical, tangible, corporeal, picturesque, so that we can grasp it. And he goes on to say, the beating rain, gushing, manifests the corporeal substance. That's the word for realization. Exactly what Yahweh taught them is perpetual, is still valid, is flowing incessantly. We've been told, it was done away with. He has a new covenant with a new people. All the Jews and all of Israel is cast aside and you're going to burn in hell. Sorry, that's not true. And then here, just as a man weeds out a field, that's to turn it into a plowland. Just as a man is in a hurry to return, and then here's the word shaddai again, the breast of or shaddai is the same word for field. The breast of a beautiful woman, to reach out his arms and enclose her. These are all pictures. That's like going back. He's bringing back this relationship between a man and a woman, the male and the female. Yahweh keeps reverting. Even the word Yahuwah is the zakar, that's masculine, and Shaddai is feminine. Even within himself, he uses both to play off, and he refers to his people of Israel as both being his son and his daughter. The word Shaddai, feminine, Shad, also means chest of drawers. It's a picture of sufficient for every provision, dispenser of benefits. But also the word should also mean evil demon, the hurler of arrows, lightning and thunder of devastation. So, last phrase here, he will teach to them as to a man. Getting back into the dynamics of male-female relationship. Green herbs in the field, a garden of delights. A woman's potential. Then there's this word that is bet, shin, dalet, hey. And if you look at Bet Shin Tav and Tav Dalet Hey, I'm sticking the letter Tav in there. The Tav's kind of like this neutral wild card, as it were. And you see that it can mean fades when shamed or stupefied, comes to nothing. So here's the point. We're at the end of this video. For the prisoner of hope is the one who reads Yahuwah's words and say, I'm going to believe it. And for us to say, okay, I'm going to believe it. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to do what he says, and I'm going to expect that he's going to smack down these guys that he stirred up for the last 3,000 years, and that's the reality. I have to take on the mind that that is the prophesied reality, and everything else is a fairy tale from Disneyland or from some other make-believe, and this I have to take on as the only reality and be his Betula, intentionally subjecting myself to his instructions as that bridle, that prisoner, and hope, which is to expect the real manifestation imminently. Any day now. Could have been yesterday, might be tomorrow, but I have to walk as if that reality is the only existence. Yahuwah, he who causes it to be, when he sees our face reflecting his, that's the time, and it'll come out of nowhere like a sudden meteor. Wham! Didn't even see it coming. Anyway, we'll have to make another video to carry on. Other things
might have to wait for that.
Yeah, we might have to wait a little bit for that.
Darn it.
Other things in Jeremiah 23 and 33 talk about the similar concepts of prisoner of hope. But at least, hopefully this is encouraging enough for people to
I like that.
not
That
suck
was
into
good, Eric. Yep.
the corona.
Very timely.
COVID
Very
thing.
timely. Hallelujah.
All right.
All right, brother. Let's go look at a
Press on.
tree house.